Hello, welcome to our seventh episode of Quakesaholics. My name is Luis. This is my co-host Kevin. A lot's happened since our last episode. We've had the Cali Clasico. We've had some changes on the staff, most notably, of course, being the sacking of Luchi Gonzalez and the appointment of Ian Russell. Not too many points, if any, that the Quakes have gathered since our last episode. But yeah, I think we should first start with the sacking of Luchi Gonzalez. How are you? What did you think when you first heard the news that Luchi Gonzalez was being sacked?
Yeah, I mean, this has been one of the hotter questions in the past 6 or so weeks, I would say. I mean, really, since the Portland game, I feel like everything's been downhill and a lot of things have been in question in terms of team, players, coaching staff, all the way up through the front office, all the way to John Fisher. I think we were both on the same page that we didn't want to see Luchi Gonzalez get sacked, but we were also understanding that it could very well happen at any time because when you have the performances that we have had, something's got to change. And unfortunately, that is the easiest part to replace. We've seen this before with, I mean, Matias Almeida even. So yeah, it wasn't surprising, but it was disappointing to me.
And then, like you said, after that capitulation at Portland, after that disgraceful penalty, we haven't really been able to pick up that form since then. And unfortunately, with given enough time and poor form, Lucci is just bound to lose his job eventually. And it's unfortunate. I mean, of course, there are certain the results speak for themselves. I think that change is absolutely necessary, or something has to change, whether that's players not being fit, whether that's we need new players, more players, whether it's the coach, something had to change. And finally, it got to the point where I guess the LAFC thrubbing, the 6-2 loss was the thing that eventually kind of the straw that broke the camel's back.
Yeah, and like I said, I was disappointed, but that isn't to say that I don't think that Lucci had any faults. I definitely think that there were some things that could have been better, but overall, I feel like the things that he did wrong were results of him going all out, trying to chase results because of how deep the hole was. And so I understand. I think the situation that he found himself with an incomplete roster for the first 10 games of the season, more or less, that just dug such a deep hole in terms of needing points. And then right when we got Hernan and got that last DP slot that we were waiting for, we had that crazy match congestion. It was like those 3 games a week for like 3 weeks. And then that led to the injuries. And then we have at one point only one starting defender, as we mentioned last week, in the back line. Like we're playing our fourth string keeper. There's only so much we can do defensively. And I think Luchi kind of understood that situation and kind of took his bet on the offense and just playing as offensive of a lineup as we could. And unfortunately, that's what really, like, led to the 5-1 in New York, losing at home to Timbers, losing both the Clásicos. I mean, the LAFC one was so much worse in terms of scoreline.
Yeah.
He did what he could. Unfortunately, it didn't work out. I still don't think that this changes anything. I mean, and now that we've seen the Galaxy game result, it just confirmed what my initial suspicion was that like this isn't going to change anything. If you think about Ian Russell, it seems like their playing style is pretty similar, like football philosophies per se. And we saw against LA, it's essentially the same lineup that we played with Luchi in the last couple of games. The only really big difference was Yarbrough back in goal, which I strongly agreed with. I definitely thought we missed him, and he played a really good game against Galaxy. As good of a game as you can when he was 3-0. But like the midfield was still very much offensive minded in a situation where we need more defense. So that was disappointing. And so it just feels like we made this change to kind of appease the fans and to change something, like change the one variable that we can, but it doesn't seem like it really led to any change. I was hoping for at least playing someone more defensive minded in the midfield, maybe making some changes in the front line. I thought Judd has been playing really good, and especially when Benji, Judd, and Morales came in against LAFC in the second half, I thought it was a much different game. And sure, maybe LAFC just took the foot off the pedal, but remember, we're still playing on the road in a very difficult stadium, very difficult environment. I felt like Morales being in the team again helped us defensively. It's the closest player that we have to a 6 at the moment, with Gresso being playing with his national team for Copa America. We just saw Nico and Yule struggle defensively in LA. And so to bring back Nico and Yule in a game like this of such importance in a situation that we are in, and this isn't to say that Nico or Yule are bad players. I mean, we've said it before that we both think that Yule is a phenomenal player, but in terms of the defensive side of the game, I thought there were better options, and so to not see them, a little bit disappointing. In terms of the back line, I thought I mean, we played the best players that we had available in every position, so no critiques there. Yeah, again, like Judd, I don't know. There's just something about these recent games that it just feels like something isn't clicking in the front three. We saw multiple chances not be able to be put away against Galaxy, and I think that had some of those chances gone in earlier in the game, we wouldn't have had that game situation of going down 1 goal, going down 2 goals, and then being forced to chase the game. And we've seen that so many times this season of chasing the game, and then it just bites us and just a landslide of goals that comes after.
Yeah, no, definitely. I agree with a lot of the things that you said. The loss at LAFC was honestly like humiliating in a way. And we were at the
Yeah.
stadium and yeah, it was so bad. And honestly, like I will admit it like got to a point where it was just kind of like apathetic toward the whole
Oh yeah.
situation. Where I was just like not really like, I didn't even feel anything. Like, I remember the way I felt at, like, 1-0 was basically the same way I felt, like, 5-1,
4-0.
and it was yeah, 4-0, 5-1, like, it was all just kinda the same, and, it just felt like and I imagine, like, if we're feeling that way, the players maybe feel that way to an extent where it just feels like there's not really much they can do or I don't know, like, it's just kind of
Yeah.
happening to them, and they're not really maybe it feels like they don't have much agency in the situation. And, yeah, the thing that you said about Morales and the defensive side of the game, I think that, like you mentioned, the midfield is a big one in terms of where we can feel that something is missing. I think once Nico came off and Morales came in, it did feel a lot better. I felt like Morales actually had honestly, like, I didn't fully recognize how big of a difference or how badly we were missing that defensive player kind of sitting in front of the back line in the midfield until Morales came on. And the energy, he wasn't afraid to go into challenges. Like, he just was a lot more up for it. Whereas again, like you mentioned, Nico and Yul, they're talented players. When you have the ball, like to control the game, maybe or to control possession, they're good players for that role. But it doesn't really matter if every single time LAFC is attacking you, they can just connect 10 passes without interruption on
Yeah.
top of your 18, right? And especially when you
Yeah.
have like your fourth string or third, fourth string I think the fourth string keeper in net as well. Like it was just so easy for them to score. I felt
Yeah.
like every single time that they attacked, they were gonna score. I remember like seeing Buonga like just running at Marie, just like yeah, it didn't feel good. And yeah, the LA Galaxy game too. I was kind of surprised that Morales didn't start. I think actually that if Luchi had stayed in his position, maybe he would have started Morales. Maybe Ian Russell wanted to kind of put the lineup that he thinks is like this is going to be like my number one pick lineup, like with the players that are
Hmm.
fit anyway, right? And like maybe he wants to kind of like put a statement on what that lineup is going to look like. Nonetheless, yeah, I still think that for the first 40 minutes or not even 40 minutes, for the first like 30 minutes or so, I thought the Earthquakes looks pretty good.
We had multiple chances in the first half.
No, yeah, definitely. And in terms of yeah, and like the goal we conceded was a really good transition goal. It's just one of those like unlucky ones where I think it was our set piece or our corner kick and it just is like a turnover and they're like, when you have Gabriel Peck and Pencil and I mean we've already seen the speed that Pencil has when he came to PayPal Park earlier in the season like, that's just very difficult to contain that transition, and I think there was actually a similar transition earlier that didn't lead to a goal or anything, like, he
Yeah.
cut it, shot, and then, like, it was easily controlled by Yarbrough, but yeah,
It was the
I
same
think
play. It was a corner in
yeah,
like the 7 or 8th minute, and then they get a counter, and like you said, Yarbrough saves it, and then that's what's so
yeah,
frustrating about the goals that we're conceding. We're seeing the same goals happen over and over again. It's counters on set pieces. With Galaxy specifically, it's counters on set pieces. But I mean, they do that to everyone, so it's just how they play. They're really good in transition. And then
yeah,
with LAFC. how many times did we just see like a diagonal cross and then a one-time finish, and it comes
Yeah.
in from both sides of the goal, and it's just so frustrating that we can't adapt to that. But I also completely understand because it's not our starting personnel, and that's just how it is. I mean, we
Yeah,
even
and
talked about this really quickly. We talked about this last time where like a team that doesn't have their starting players is going to suffer. And I remember on the night of this LAFC game when we lost this bad, I was curious and I checked Cincinnati because remember Matt Miazga got that injury playing against us, and then Robinson is out with the U.S. men's national team. So they play at three in the back. Two of their center backs are out. So I was just curious of like, okay, how are they going to adapt to this? And then they play in their rotation players. They play against New England, who is bottom in the East, and then they lose. It's like, okay, if Cincinnati can't get it done with two players out, how are we going to get it done with 4 to 5 players out? And I think that's also part of the frustration of seeing Luchi get sacked because it's just there's nothing he can do with the situation.
yeah, honestly, like you hear a lot of people say that, oh, well, that's not an excuse. That's not an excuse. But I mean, it's like a loss is never excusable, right? Like
Hmm.
fully excusable. But the thing is, though, is like you have to be honest and you just have to give context and understand like why the results are happening. And that's also going to be relevant when you're deciding on whether you want to continue with a coach or not. Because if it truly is
Yeah,
not entirely their fault, then that is going to be relevant. Like, yeah, the loss sucks. Like, obviously, it hurts and it's ugly, but you can't just expect like an MLS level team or a team competing in MLS and having being forced into playing, not their strongest defense. And even with our, whether it be like systematic issues or whatever, even with everyone fit, like we were still struggling in defense in other occasions. But like, I think that these last few results just aren't fully representative of any progress or lack thereof that Lucci like had or hadn't made up until the
yeah,
game where he got sacked.
yeah. It's just like you look at this table. The last two teams that we played are both top of the West, and then when we played Cincinnati, they're top of the East, and then the other game sandwiched between those sets of games is the Portland game, and that Portland game was so frustrating. We're playing at home, and Jacob Jackson just gives them one goal, and then the second goal he blocks it, but then deflects it into the goal, and so they're just like, okay, what can we do? Like, there's just so much bad luck, and the Portland game, that
Yeah,
one, I do think that, come on, Luchi, like we've seen Jacob Jackson in the Open Cup, and not that he played bad against Sacramento, but it just we
he
never, at
did
least I
concede.
never felt that security. I didn't
Yeah,
feel
he
the
did
security of
concede.
yeah, bro.
He did concede 4 goals in that game.
Yeah, and I
Like,
mean,
he scored
I,
3 goals against the USL team and lost.
and then
Come on,
like
man.
two back-to-back goals, and of course that isn't apples to apples. Like we talked about the whole left back having like 3 different players throughout the course of the game.
Yeah, 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 but,
There's lots of confusion, but still, you're conceding that many goals. It can be good for your confidence at the very least.
yeah, and,
But
I mean, there were some good, like, I feel like his shot stopping isn't bad, but, yeah, like, if you do have Yarbrough there, and especially after, like you said, after the game against Portland, like, I think that it's pretty clear to me that Yarbrough like, maybe Jackson just needs a bit more time, and also,
mhm,
like you said, LAFC is a tough place to play. And,
it's
like,
so tough.
imagine being, like, like, this inexperienced goalie, and then you're just, like, thrown into that environment, like, okay, this is, like, your 2nd ever MLS start, or at least with the Quakes, and then it's, like, that environment, like, you gotta you have Bouanga cutting in and, like, taking shots on you, like, I don't
Yeah,
know, I think mentally as well, maybe Yarbrough would've been better for that
yeah.
game.
So that's what I mean
And
with the critiques of Lucci. It's just my only critiques are some of his choices for the 11,
Uh-huh.
but in terms of like his overall approach to like, okay, we're in this huge hole. We're playing for. We have nothing to lose. We might as well go for it. Like I mean, we've talked about this. Like I definitely sided with that mentality, but
Yeah.
some of these player choices just did not do him any justice.
Yeah, like you said, it's the first the LA Galaxy game came in like 3 days after Ian Russell was appointed. So it's gonna take
Yeah.
some time. we'll see what happens there. But like you said, the Galaxy game was more of the same, and
Mhm.
we were doing a good job. I've seen other people talk about like, oh, we were doing good defensively for the first like 70 minutes. Like it was just that one transition, and like I do agree with that to an extent, but that was also without Ricky Pooch. So, and when Ricky Pooch came on, they got 2 goals like that, you
Yep.
know?
Yep.
So, I'm not saying that we weren't better defensively. I think especially again, yeah, like within those first 70 minutes, that first half, even more specifically, we were fine defensively, we were good. I don't know what if that would have still been that way had Ricky Pooch started. I don't know, but I do know that he didn't, so that's kind of like an unknown. And you can't use those first 70 minutes and use it as like a direct comparison between the last time we played LAFC at home, you know?
Yeah.
I did want to talk about the players or some of the players. We talked about the midfield a little bit, how maybe we were a bit surprised that Morales didn't start just because of how much better he was defensively, and if that's the main agenda of the club right now is to kind of fix up things defensively. I'm not sure why he wouldn't start given the performance he had against LAFC. But other than that, I think up top, there's also a lot of issues.
I mean, we make the
Yeah.
joke all the time that this is 50 and we're 54 goals allowed. This is 50.
Yeah, the other thing that I wanted to talk about that we've kind of been talking about for a while now, but was very what I felt a lot during the Galaxy game was the conversation about Pellegrino and Abobasi. I think that Judd was way better than Abobasi, honestly, when he came on. I know that Abobasi can drop back and connect the play, and that is definitely a skill, but I don't think that that's really what we need. I feel like we need someone who can just finish the chances when the opportunity presents itself. That's been like an issue during so many of our games where have like the higher XG or create the better chances, but just don't put them away. And that's something that I remember Luchi would always talk about to contextualize results in post-match interviews, talking about like, oh well,
Mhm.
like we created the better chances, or like if you actually watch the game, like we created the better chances. It is true, and that's why I think that maybe whether it be because of confidence or whatever, I do think that Judd deserves a few run of games. Or one thing that I've also thought about too before is I'd also be fine with Pellegrino being put at striker and then just having Benji start as well. I mean, during the LAFC game, like Benji and Morales, I think were the two only players that really felt like they were up for it. Like they were
Yep.
meeting the intensity that was required to play in that stadium against that team. And so I would be interested in seeing a Pellegrino as in the nine and then Benji starting on the wing. How
Mhm.
how would you how would you feel about that?
Yeah, that's an interesting suggestion. I definitely, in my mind, I thought Benji Judd is what I would go for, entirely based off of what we saw against LAFC. I think in a situation like this, just play the hot hand, and if those are the players that are playing well, like give them more time. Um,
Mm.
but yeah, like if we're going to be changing the head coach, I think everything is like
There's a lot up for grabs, I think.
yeah, exactly. That nothing should be well, okay, not nothing. There are certain players that I think are like a strong lock. I think the
Yeah,
strong locks are
right,
pretty
right.
obvious, but like
Of
everything
course.
else, I would say is up for grabs. They're like I said, we're not playing like we don't have anything to lose at this point. Like we're already gonna set
Yeah,
records in terms of goals allowed. We might as well try new things, you know? If we're going to be
I agree.
losing these games in this way, I at least want to see us changing variables game to game and try to figure something out. Because if we're going to keep doing the same thing and then just getting smacked week in, week out, what are we learning? What are we gaining out of that?
Again, I understand why Luchi got sacked, and he was on track to one of the worst or the worst defensive record like league has ever seen. But
Hmm.
like, I do think that like with time, like you're bound to be forced into making changes, and I just don't want that kind of timer, I guess, to be reset. And now Ian's just gonna try basically the same thing we had already been doing, and then like only once it gets tough for him, then we see new things or like
Yeah.
bigger changes.
And I
So
think just realistically, making those kinds of changes, even if they sound crazy, like Pellegrino at the nine, like we don't have other options in terms of what we can change. The summer window doesn't start until mid-July. We know how the Quakes do business. We don't do business at the start of the window. We do business at the end of the window. And I don't remember the exact dates. Realistically, if we're going to have any changes in the roster, it's not going to be until after Leagues Cup. And between now and then, I mean, July, if you've looked at the schedule, it's super packed. There's so many games. And the good thing is that there's a lot of home games. I think we play St. Louis away on this Wednesday, July 3rd. And then after that, I believe it's all home games. There might be one other away game in there, which will be good. Less travel. It'll be easier on the players. We're back at home. The ultras are back. Probably help at least a little bit. I don't think it's realistic to expect roster changes right now. That's just not how we do things. And I don't say that as like a jab at John Fisher. I know right now the most popular opinion to have as a Quakes fan is to hate John Fisher. I'm actually not on that boat at all. I mean, we can get into this a whole different time, but I think John Fisher has done what he's supposed to do, which is when the front office identifies a player, he cuts the check to buy that player. And he did that with Hernan. He did that with Gresso when he joined. And I mean, whatever your opinions are of Gresso now, at the time, remember that everyone wanted the six. We got the DP6. He made the signing. We got Luchi Gonzalez, which is a big name from the USMNT. And again, you can think of what you want from Luchi right now, but in the moment, that was a strong candidate. Just like in the moment, Matias was a really strong candidate, and all of those big names have cost us money. And whether they work out or not, that is not John Fisher's fault. That is whoever suggested to John Fisher and pitched the idea of getting that coach or getting that player. And also remember that John Fisher did sign Espinosa, what was it, in 2019, 2020, that first contract, and then re-signed him last year. And so you look at like the past 3 years, John Fisher has made big money moves, and Espinosa, I don't know if it was a record signing, but it was a 7-figure signing, and then Gresso was a record fee. Hernan is a record fee. We don't know, at least I don't know Matias' salary, but Matias is a huge name. So I'm guessing, I mean, people called Matias like a designated player per se in terms of how much money it was. So I mean, even like this infrastructure, like with the county fairgrounds, like the front office is making moves, and like if our entire defense is out and we're getting smacked every game, like that's not John Fisher's fault. Sorry for ranting, but
Yeah, I think that's probably like one of the biggest hot takes we could have on video.
so I saved it for the end of the video. No one's listening.
Yeah, the F word. Yeah, the F bomb at the end. Yeah, I do think that'd be a good discussion for like another video. We can go more in depth in that. But I like on the surface of it, I agree, you know. And if you look at other teams, Quakes are not last. They're in the bottom half, but they're not last in terms of the money in terms of like wages. So
Hmm.
like
Yeah.
like we in terms of money, if you want to talk about money, the resources we have put into this squad and into this team should merit a much better position than we're in, you
Yes.
know? So,
But it's injuries.
and yeah, so in like at the very least you can say that.
It's not like we weren't prepared. We had like 4 or 5 goalkeepers at one point. And in the moment that sounded absurd, but
Yeah, that's the thing too. Yeah, so and I mean like Luchi, I mean after what he did last season, right? Like I was very confident in him going into this season. And
yeah.
I don't know, I think maybe it's like the kind of the stars align in terms of the players that got injured or the players that got moved out
Hmm.
or the players that came in. It's just a lot of things that kind of have led us to be in the situation that we're in. But I think just pointing the finger at John Fisher, just pointing the finger at Lucci is simplistic,
Hmm.
um,
Yeah.
and not entirely fair
Yeah.
for this
And
exact specific situation.
I don't want to throw people under the bus, but someone I don't hear get talked of at all is Chris Leach, who, at least from our understanding, is the person that's making a lot of these decisions in terms of personnel, or at least has a significant say in who we get. I'm pretty sure it was right after Chris Leach came that they got a Bobasi, for example. Chris Leach was the person that appointed Luchi Gonzalez. And don't forget that Ian Russell was a strong candidate in that discussion. And so, yes, Ian Russell is the interim coach, but in terms of my expectations, it's a lot higher than when Alex Cavallo came in because
That's a good
Ian
point.
Russell is, yeah, like Ian Russell is a much bigger name. He was considered for the actual full time position, and then Lucci brought him in as assistant. So if Ian does poorly, then that's just another reflection of. I mean, again, like there's injuries, so it's not like you can't just blanket say like, oh, like Ian is bad if we lose
Yeah,
more games. The point I'm trying to say is like once the squad is more fit, if we still see the
exactly.
bad results, it's at what point do we also say like, okay, like who is choosing these people and how much accountability do they have? Because I personally think that Chris Leach has way, way, way more of a say in how this team is run than John Fisher.
No, definitely. Yeah, in terms of the direction of the team.
But that's where we are at, and we'll see what happens with Ian Russell and the team. Obviously, we wish everyone in the Quakes nothing but the best. We are devoted fans. I don't know how else to prove that other than continuing with the season that we've had and making the ridiculous drive to LA just to see us lose 6-2. Like, if you thought watching it on TV was
Yeah, we
bad,
deserve a medal or like a ribbon or something. But hopefully, you and Russell can change some things around, move the pieces around, and get some results in the more favorable ties we have ahead. I hope.
yeah, yeah. And there are positives. Rodriguez is back. He's been looking good. Got a goal. Muni, he's been developing well. It's been, I think, the past like 2 or 3 games, he's had close to 2 goals. I think one was offsides, and then the other one was, I think it was blocked. I don't remember, but it was a good chance. It's like on the set
I
pieces
think.
when we all go up. So
Yeah, I think Daniel Mooney is like kind of reminds me of like COVID Beeson, where like there were moments where he's like promising, and
yes, yes.
and I do like obviously like this is not the team, especially like being a center back. Like this is not a favorable environment. Really, he's getting completely thrown into the deep end. But I think maybe
Hmm.
that's kind of like what he needs in a way, or like it's just kind of like it's gonna hurt. It's gonna suck at first. The learning curve is gonna be like very steep, but
Hmm.
maybe once he's
Yeah.
kind of felt that, he will be a bit it'll be better for him in the long run.
Yeah, agreed. But yeah, like I said, lots of home games, lots to look forward to. Playing at home is always easier, and we also did get a lot of the harder opponents out of the way pretty early. No more Galaxy games outside of Leagues Cup, and we won't be playing LAFC again until I believe it's the last match day. Play on the road at LAFC. But yeah, more mid-table opponents, home games, ultras, Seismic Union. Hoping to see a lot more people at the stadiums.
I know
We got
you'll
to
see
support the
us.
team.
We can
Yeah,
guarantee
yeah, you'll see
we'll
us.
be us.
Yeah,
We'll
that's all we
be there.
had this time. So if you made it this far, thanks for listening. We'll catch you next time.
Thank you guys.